Welcome to the post-screening Q&A of Anup Singh's Qissa. Qissa is screening at the BMO International Film Festival of South Asia, Toronto. The festival has gone virtual this year. The screening is part of a special section celebrating the work of Irrfan Khan, who we tragically lost earlier in the year. Qissa began its journey in 2013 with the world premiere at TIFF. It was also the opening film of the prestigious Rotterdam Film Festival in 2014. It clocked impressive festival miles, accolades, and awards for the cast and crew. I have with me director Anup Singh and actors Tisca, Chopra, Tillotama, Shome, and Rasika Dugal to chat about the film and its legacy. Thank you for making the time and joining us today. I have to make a personal confession. Every time I watch Qissa, I feel pangs of jealousy because I wish it had premiered at MAMI when we came into the picture. All of Anup's films have screened at MAMI, and we are very fortunate that Anup has made us a part of his journey. And your work, Tisca, Tillotama, and Rasika, has been consistently part of the festival. You've also brought so much heft and pride to Indian cinema across the world. Qissa is such an incredible film with the best talent in the industry working today. I feel that Qissa walked so that Masan, Titli, Chauthi Koot, Ibaleu, Soni, Nasir could run. So I want to begin by asking all of you that when you were making this film, and I think it took Anup some 11 or 12 years to kind of get this off the ground, did you know what you were creating?
If I think about it, and this is very strange because I will have to think back. And as it happens with all memories, you also make them up as you think about it. So in fact, what I'm going to tell you now is precisely a story, all right? Who knows the truth of that time, really speaking? So what I could say is that in the late 80s, early 90s, with the conflict in Ayodhya, really, where suddenly we started hearing stories about a Ram Mandir, which was there, stories about a Ram Mandir, which was not there, And I realized very quickly that rather than the truth of the matter, which suddenly did not matter at all, these stories had taken on a passion and a power that went beyond whatever might have been true, And this passion, this power, in fact, had done what stories had done earlier within the nation. And it had created another partition. This time, a partition, unfortunately, not simply in terms of questions of land, but this was a partition really in our spirit, in terms of a nation, in our hearts, in our mind, in our consciousness. And I think that was the moment when it really hit me what the actual power of a story is. And let's say, as a storyteller, perhaps that would be my beginning, because I really started to think, what is this thing that we call a story? What does it tell us? Does it really have this kind of power that it makes us? We always thought that we were watching stories and, we were in dialogue with it, and we were telling stories what they should be because we were creating them. But I realized that's not the simple truth. The truth is that these stories make us as much as we make stories. And these stories also then tell us, speak to us about what is a man, what is a woman, what are children. These stories are telling us what is a nation. These were some of the questions at that time that I started to think about. The very nature of story itself, its power. And I realized that a story could be a curse, as the stories of the partition have been, but they could also be a healing, as the stories of partition have also been. Why do we choose certain stories and we don't choose others? why do we repeat the telling of certain stories and others much more privately? You know? So it's not surprising that my film would be called Qissa, because the film really is about storytelling. So for me, that really was, in a way, the beginning.
Tisca, Tillotama, Rasika, when you took on the material, when you decided to work in the film, did you, at that point of time, was there any idea that you felt that it would have the kind of resonance that the material found, you know, across with audiences all over and critics all over?
When I read the document that Anup gave me, it was a thick volume. How much was it, Anup? 400 pages? Like, it's huge.
I like your memory very much, but it was about 120 pages.
Okay, so it was this large work, and there was this faded image on the cover, like a Xeroxed image, which was of a man standing behind a woman and a family, and for me, it looked very similar to the picture that my Nana and Nani had. And for me, the resonances and the cadences were the cadences of my childhood, because both my grandparents migrated from Pakistan into India. And the stories that they that passed down from cousins and from uncles and aunts from both sides of the family were so much of what was part of what I was supposed to play in the film. So for me, it wasn't an opportunity that I could let go of, because it's only in a medium like film that you can go back into your own past, sort of play your own grandmother, either Nani or Dadi, and kind of simulate their journey via a script. And that for me was priceless. I called my father when we were shooting Qissa from near the Wagah border, and where I was just called him random call, and I asked him. He asked me where I was shooting, so I said I'm shooting in this place near the Wagah border, and he said he went quiet for a minute, and then he told me that his father had landed in that exact spot many years ago and had 1,000 rupees in his pocket, and his pocket got picked, and he had 7 children to feed, and the 1,000 rupees were gone. So revisiting those places, those lanes, those physical places and also mental places was it was a magical experience actually for me. And then meeting our dear Anup, who is dear to all of us, was another experience altogether. But more on that as we go along.
But you know, like you said, Tisca, even for Tillotama and Rasika, you know, this film is really personal because your families have experienced being displaced. How did you process the material?
From the time that I was cast very last minute in Qissa, there was somebody else who was supposed to do this part, and for some reason it didn't work out. And Pushpender, who's a very talented director who's made Ashwathama, was Anup's DA at that time, and he called me and he said, you know, this has happened, so would you like to hear the script? And we can get, and Anup and Pushpender were on Recce in Punjab at that time. And this was about 20 days before we were supposed to start shoot, approximately.
Yeah.
So I got on a Skype call and Anup started this. And I had met Anup at FTI. He had taken a class with him. And I was familiar with his work. And I knew him and I had met him a couple of times after that. So I was very excited to be on that Skype call So he narrated the script to me, and he said, Neeli and cover do this and Neeli and cover do that. And basically he took me through the whole script. And I hadn't had much work at that time. And I had been waiting for very long to do some work. So I was just holding my breath and I was thinking, ki abhi ye kahani khatam karenge. And then he'll say, ki acha, but there's this other part, which has 2 scenes and I want you to do this. But he finished the narrative and he said, and I want you to play Neeli. And I was like, wow, Anup Singh, and I get to play a lead part in his film. So it was complete joy. And I was just trying to be a little more professional and not, jump out of the screen. But Anup told me later that he could see me jump, even though I didn't physically do so. So my joy began there. And, unlike other projects which go through several negotiations, this one was smooth in every way because I think the intent was very clear on all sides. They really wanted me to do it. I really wanted to do it. And living with a script, which honestly, when I had read the first time, when I reached the point in the script where where the film gets into magic realism, I did not understand it. And I was wondering how, I was nervous. I was wondering how I am going to begin to bring anything to this film. But I trusted Anup a lot, and I knew that his style of working was something which everybody spoke about in a way that was an experience of a lifetime. And I wanted to see how that played out for me. While shooting it, there was just so many things. I think the one thing that I will always really, really remember is how much that space encouraged me to be vulnerable and how fearless I was to be vulnerable in that space. I don't think I've always attempted to find that in the other work that I've done, and I found it in bits and pieces, but not in the way that I found it in Qissa. Also, like you said, the memory, I think I always felt that I carry the memory of being uprooted or being displaced because always stories around that have always moved me in a very fundamental way. My family actually was in Burma during World War II, and during World War II they moved to Rawalpindi and Lahore, and my father was born in Lahore. And I always thought about the stories that my grandparents used to tell me from that time, and I could never understand those stories really because they were my grandfather. Very much later, I understood that my grandmother and my grandfather were actually telling me the same story, but they had such different versions of that. And in the way that they told it, because it was to preserve something that it was how they wanted to remember it, like Anup said. So my grandmother would talk about how she was pregnant, and then she had another child to take care of, and they had to constantly shift to look for a house because my grandfather didn't have a job. And then she would tell me about this other woman who gave birth to a child while they were on this ship. And it was full of details with the name of the ship and smaller details about the place. But it's almost like she was seeing it like a film. But my grandfather's story just didn't match up because according to him, he always had a really great job and they were always well-to-do. And so while we were shooting for that, I think a lot of what they had told me came back in many ways. And it's around then that I understood that they were possibly telling me a story about the same time.
Tillotama, you are luminous as conversing. If Conver did not feel authentic, I feel that the film would have flattened. How did you work with Anup to bring Conver alive?
To start with, when I met Anup the first time at Marriott over a coffee, Anup asked me about me. He asked me about who I was. And I don't think I've been heard like that. He really wanted to know who I was and where I came from. And I don't know what that made him feel, but I know that I felt heard for the first time in a very long time, in an industry where I felt like an outsider. And then when he told me about the story of Qissa, I don't have a partition story. I know my grandparents came from Bangladesh, but they passed away when I was really young. And so I don't have a personal story to share, or the connection was not with the partition as much as with the idea of being an outsider, because my dad was in the Air Force, and so the center of who you are and your identity was so fluid. And one became an expert, like in being able to hide, in being able to be invisible when you assumed that this new environment might be threatful, might be threatening. And so I had mastered that unconsciously when I moved from one place to another, and how to just stay, blend in, not do anything to stick out, and not do anything that makes my uniqueness shine in any way. And so I really connected to that aspect of the film, of Cover, his sense of hiding, her sense of confusion vis-a-vis identity. And I was really really moved by Anup as a person, and I knew this film was going to be huge. And I don't mean in secular terms of how many film festivals or box office. I just knew it was going to be monumental. I knew it was going to be monumental when Anup told me what the story was, when I met him the very first time. And I have, and it only got strengthened with every step. Then I went for my audition, which was make yourself into a complete jalebi, like a pretzel. So he asked me to twist and turn my body completely. And he said, when you can't hold on to it any longer, and it just, your body is forced to open out, just say the word, if you can, the word Ma. And it was the most extraordinary audition. And later I understood, like, the relationship Cover has with Tisca, with his mother. And that, so I mean, every step. So my first meeting, the audition, reading the script, I just knew I had stepped into a world which was, which gave me the courage to stick onto this, with this profession, with this industry. I was very, very close to leaving it, And once I had the script, I because of this whole notion of playing a man, I immediately went the coward in me, the generation that has grown up, with using Google, wanted to look at every other film where an actor played a man, a woman played a man, and Boys Don't Cry, and blah, blah, blah. And I asked him, should I watch this? No, it's okay if you don't. And he's very polite. So he doesn't even say it, and so Anup, should I watch this? No. Okay. So Anup, what should I watch? No, nothing. Like, no, just, when you have time, read the script. And we had a lot of time, because when I came onto the project, and then there was 9 months after that the project actually happened. And meanwhile, my Punjabi classes had started. He gave me this wonderful teacher, Jaswinder, and Kalari Paitu, because he wanted my body to have a sense of balance, and driving classes. And there was a scene which is not there in the film where young Cover swims. And there's a scene, it's not there in the film. I read the thing, I was like, oh no, now I've been cast for this. Everything is kind of done. And I have to tell him that I don't know how to swim. And he's going to throw me out. So I call him and I tell him that, Anup, I'm really sorry, but this is really bad news, but I don't know how to swim. And, but, if you give me time, I'll learn it. Like, I don't know, like, the film is being pushed. And he was like, okay, start learning it. Why don't you choose a swimming pool and you can speak to the producer and figure out. I swam. The first day I could move my arm, leg, and do the breathing. I called him ecstatic. I've learned it. And he was so happy for me. And and it was amazing. And then weeks, days passed, and I read the script again. And I realized that was young Cover. I don't ever need to swim in that, in the film. Like, I felt like how brain dead am I? And I was like, why didn't he say? But you don't have to swim, so you don't need to learn how to swim. He was like, because you were so excited about it. But that's Anup, he just embraces you as you are. And and lets you really thrive, you know, and which is why I knew this was going to be, you know, monumental. But when I kept asking him as the time for the film came closer, and I asked him, I need some reference, I'm really afraid, you know, he asked me to watch 2 films of Dilip Kumar, Tarana and Aan, and he would call me every now and then and ask me what I felt about the film. And from the answer I gave, I knew that it was not the answer he was looking for. But he would be, oh, that's wonderful. If you have time, watch it again. I was like, oh no, that means I still haven't, you know. But I did watch it. Sorry, Smriti, what were you saying?
I was just saying that basically, I also read somewhere that Anup had a very different brief for you in terms of how to approach the character. Yes. That he actually said that, you know, stop looking to play a man, but yes, look to play a son who is going to do everything for the father.
Yes. Thank you for stopping my digressing, but that usually happens. I speak about. Thank you.
Not.
But that's exactly. Thank you, Smriti, for doing your homework. And yes, he told me not to focus on playing a man, to not look for any reference in Western or Indian cinema, and try and copy the idea of what a man is, because no 2 men are the same. So who is going to be the reference, really? And he said, you know, if you're looking for something to watch, look at maybe these 2 films. And it was much later that I discovered why I had to watch those 2 films of Dilip Kumar. But you're absolutely right. He said that just be a son, do anything to win your father's love. And the father was being played by Irrfan. I'd do anything to win his love. And Anup. Anup was my, you know, the father behind the pages, and on the pages was Irrfan. I'd do anything to win, you know, win their trust, because they had really placed it on me, you know. So that became the thing. Not the search was not then anymore in the film, but it became about really understanding why it was so important for him to love me, you know, and that changed everything.
Anup?
I think in many ways, you know, when I listen to Tisca, Rasika, Tillotama, there is something that happens between people who work together. And certainly something happens between a director and an actor when you're playing something that means so much to you on various levels. You know, not only a challenge as an actor, but there's something in your family life, there's something in your personal life that you feel that this role might help you, you know, start on a journey, a seeking. So when I give a direction, if you like, to an actor, you know, it is something very intimate. And I am hoping at that point that it not be an idea that I'm passing on, that it becomes an emotion that the actor can carry and work with it, you know. And I can say very little else about this because, you know, I searched very, very much to find the right phrase to say to Tillotama, you know. Not for any reason, but the reason being that I wanted to say it as clearly as possible to her so that it would help her, you know. Sometimes, and you know, all 3 women will tell you, I can speak in a very roundabout way and not get to the point at all, you know. So there are different ways and means of speaking to an actor. But in this particular case, there is a simple idea behind it. And I think, in a sense, I referred to it when I was speaking earlier. And that is, you know, we always, with binaries in some way or another, we tell ourselves stories that if I was like this and like this and like this, I would be a great man. You know, I would be a macho, I would be, you know, the lover of women, I would be a great drunkard, you know, all those kind of things. Or I tell myself stories and say, I be like this and like this and like this, I would be the most erotic woman that there is, you know. I would be the charm of any society, all right? It depends on the stories that we tell each other. And I'm very keen to help the actors with a story or with a roundabout story, which will help them in some way. Here, I am telling Tillotama that there's no such thing as a man. And this is what the film is really at its core about. You know, it is about how we make men and the stories we tell ourselves that help in the making of men and women and children, you know, and others and enemies and villains, you know. It's all these kind of stories that we tell ourselves. But what are we at our deepest center? We are possibilities, you know. And this, as an actor, I think is very important, that you work with your memory, you work with your desire, you work with your intimations, you work with your intimacies, and you say to yourself, I want my father to love me, you know, and what would I do for that? That is very personal, it's very visceral, you know, and it really belongs to you inside your body. So I wanted that really for Tillotama to find for herself.
Where do you think Umair Singh's obsession with a male child stems from? It escalates post-partition. Apart from conditioning, is it because being around so many women isolated him? He wanted someone who will take the family name forward and also be his partner in crime. I mean, at the end of the day, he does know that the child that he has is not male. He is he's just imagined that. He makes himself believe that she is a man. So where does that obsession, why does it escalate so much? Where does that come from?
I think there are various things, and some are understandable and some are really heinous, you know, behind that desire. What possibly is understandable is that here's a man who wakes up one day and he finds that he's lost his land, his home, his country. You know, just in a day, it's all gone. What is there that he can hold on to? You know, the only thing that he can hold on to is an idea of future, you know, because at this moment he has no future. His past has been erased, his present is unknown, and his future is just possibility. What will give this future some concreteness? Unfortunately, in our societies, we believe that it is the sun that will carry us into immortality, you know. And I think a man who has just lost his past, who has lost his forefathers, you know, through the partition, who has lost his home, is going to become very obsessed about what he will create for the future. And for him, therefore, the sun is a symbol of everything that he has lost and he wants to reaffirm. So in a way, I think that is understandable, and I have very little trouble with that. Okay. The heinous side of it is to believe that it is the male child, you know, that will affirm this future. I don't understand it at all, really, you know, because I see, for example, I mean, this is so obvious that I find it laughable, that the making of any child is a making together of a man and a woman, you know. It is a co-creation. Why has the male then the priority to believe that the male in the family will carry the family name? You know, I don't understand that. Now, these are stories that we have created. They are part of our mythology. They are part of our legends. And I think much of the work that we do as filmmakers today, or as storytellers or artists of any kind, is that we re-question, actually we question again and again, what do these stories tell us? What are they actually telling us? What do they want us to believe? And that was one of the things that I wanted to challenge in the film, you know, that this woman who pretends to be a man will actually carry him much further than perhaps a boy child really could have. If anybody makes him immortal, which is also a curse in the film, she is the one who makes him immortal. You know? So that was the thought behind it.
You know, I was doing a discussion with somebody about themes and what the film has to say. So my question is to Anup actually. Anup, your film deals with multiple themes. They're all dense and deep. How did you balance the themes in your film?
There is something about cinema, and I think I need to say this very honestly. There's something about cinema, it teaches you something. If you look at cinema, let's say, as light and dark, you know, light and shadow, then you know also that there are numerous tones in between. All right? So cinema is impossible without these tonalities. Okay? In the same way, when one talks about themes, you know, it doesn't make sense to say against patriarchy, against you know, this kind of gender biases, against the idea of manipulation. You know, these are like light and shadow. Okay. Whereas what I'm really concerned with is that all of us, and in fact the pandemic makes this very, very clear, and how we have chosen to live it, each one of us, is that we have a lot of tonalities in between, that we have possibilities of moving within those, you know, without actually becoming caught up in just one way of being, one ideology, one truth. One gender, one nation, one, you know, whatever you want to put into these kind of homogeneous artifacts. All right. So in terms of themes in the film, there is one large theme, I think, that wanders through the film. And if I were trying to put my finger on that, I would say it is the theme of home.
The loss of home, yeah.
Actually, not even the loss of home, just the idea of home.
Okay.
Yeah. What is this home for us? Really, you know, who is inside, who is outside? What is this idea of shelter? What is this idea of belonging? What is this idea of the outside being fearful, the inside being protective? You know, all these are notions that we carry from this idea of home. To a large extent, it is experiential. You know, there is a certain comfort and shelter that a home provides us. But on another level, home is also something that cuts us, that blocks us, that limits us. And when we talk about home in such a fashion, we can talk about nation. We can talk about gender. You know, we can talk about being a father, you know, and forget that we were once a child ourselves, you know. So the home therefore became the running motive for me. And I realized that this theme, if you like, if I really wanted to deal with it honestly, and as deeply as possible, then all these other themes were not separate from the idea of home. They all went into my understanding of just what a home is, what a nation is, you know, what gender is. So, you know, I don't think that the film is actually full of themes, you know. I think that the film actually has a theme, and because I wanted to deal with the theme as deeply as possible, you realize that one thing is not separate from another. Yeah. everything is bound in our ecosystem, in the larger ecosystem of our cosmos. Everything has a dialogue with something else. Yeah. So, Qissa.
You know, things have really changed in the cinema landscape in the last decade. And do you feel that the journey of Qissa, which was exemplary in 2013 when it came out, would have been different today?
I really don't know. I really don't know. If I look at what is happening around us today, I would say that there is a certain, and because of circumstances, because of what we are living today, it's very different from what we were living, let's say, in 2013. What we are living today is a direct confrontation with reality. And this reality is frightening. So I'm not surprised that more and more filmmakers want to deal with this reality head on. You know, my film doesn't do that. My film deals with reality as a reflection, as a thinking about it. You know, it talks about certain truths which make for such reality. You know, and so I'm not very sure that the journey of Qissa would be in any way better today. You know, perhaps in fact it might be worse, because it would not fall into ready-made patterns. It would not fall into ready-made generalizations. It would not fall into that this film talks about this. You know, I hope that my film will always escape these kind of borders, and that we will, and people who watch the film will always watch it as a film, as a celebration of cinema, that the story, the characters are not only simply stories that we are narrating, but they are told and presented to you in a certain way, you know. And that certain way is a very gentle way. I think, and I hope that you will take this gentleness from the film and be gentle with the world, which is so horrific around us and within us. To me, that is what I hope Qissa's destiny will be.
Well, Qissa is very quietly terrifying, I have to tell you, Anup. I always get anxiety every time I watch it, and I think that's the good kind of anxiety. You know, before we end, we need to speak about Irrfan. I didn't know him as a person at all. My memories of him are consuming his work, and it seems hard enough for everyone who loved him as an artist. The loss has been hard. So I can only imagine what you as collaborators and friends feel. And he's left such a legacy of great work. If you can speak about him, you know, anything that you want to put out there. And also my second question is that as an artist, when you lose other artists, do you ever think about, when you're accepting work, when you're thinking about material, when you're working, do you think about legacy?
Maybe I could say a few words here. And you know, you get this early morning phone call, and it is one of the most devastating news that I know I'll hear in my life. Especially because I believed at that time that Irrfan had crossed the threshold and in fact was getting better. You know, something happens to your day, something happens to your spirit. I remember that particular day, the only thing that made sense to me was no matter where I would sit, I would just watch shadows growing or diminishing. That's all that I remember of that day. You know, wherever I was, just these shadows I would see, and then they would diminish, and I would realize, oh, we've come to the end of the day. You know, one thing I would there are two things allow me to say about Irrfan. One, I would like to celebrate him, first of all, as a friend, and that is, while there was a lot of joy, really, really a lot of joy on Qissa, it is one of the happiest moments that I have lived. There's no doubt about that. Irrfan did tell me that whenever he comes to shoot on my film, he has never been happier. He just feels totally free. He feels like a kite, really, up in the sky. And someone has cut the string, so he's quite free. But there were certain moments of, there were certain tough moments in Qissa, especially with one of the European producers who was really harassing me a lot. And I had to fight that almost on a daily basis. And one day it was worse than ever. And in fact, I had considered walking off the film at that point. That evening, after the shoot was over, I was in my room and there was this knock at the door, and Irrfan came in carrying a whole bundle in his hands, And what he had done basically is that he had carried this whole music system that he has, which he had in his room. And he brought it all down into my room. And, just chatting, he didn't say anything. He was just chatting to me. He said, Anup, there's something kuch sunata hu main tumhe. There's something you have to listen to. So he attached everything. He attached his speaker, and he sat with me the whole night. He saw I was in despair. I was in real anguish. And he just sat with me the whole night, playing music the whole night. We both love Nusrat Ali Fateh Khan a lot, so we heard a lot of Nusrat that night. He made me, I think, 10 cups of tea, really. We spoke in between. And next day, he had to shoot. He had to get up, I think, at around 5:30 because he had all this makeup to do to become a Sardar, the beard and the turban. And I think it was around 4:30 that he finally saw me smiling. And that's the only time that he then left, But he had given me strength, he had given me his affection, he had given me his belief, and he had given me what a friend gives you, that there is more in life. Like, for example, there's Nusrat. Right. So that is one thing really that I appreciated about him very much. And this is just one of those occasions where, he brought himself to me as a human being, and he made me a part of his inner life. And I think this relates for me directly to what is Irrfan's legacy. And to me, that legacy is very important. What is this legacy for me is that there is a certain fragility of emotion that all of us live. There is so much that we are not able to say to the other. And Irrfan, again and again in his films, he has tried to show us that it is this fragility that really makes us the human beings that we are. It is our ability to cross our fears, our anxieties, and to reach out to the other with all our vulnerableness, that allows us actually to communicate. And that is what I think makes him the great actor that he is, that again and again he tells us, accept our fragility, accept our vulnerability, and do not fear to share it. It doesn't matter how hard the world is, that is what we need to share with each other. And I think post the pandemic, that is a lesson that we need to carry with us even more strongly.
Thank you, Anup. Rasika?
I've told this story so many times that I almost feel like Tisca and Tillotama and Anup are going to tell, they can tell the story for me, actually. But it's really a very big moment in my life. And I think, and the beauty about it was that I realized it even then. You know, it's not, some very beautiful things happen in life, and somehow you sort of learn to value it retrospectively. And this was one of those experiences where I was so stunned by the magic of it that I didn't know something like this could happen. So we were shooting one of the scenes in Qissa, which is right before, it's like the second last scene of the film. And we, something was not working. It was not as special as other scenes had been. I couldn't understand what was not working. And Anup seemed like he really wanted it to be better, but we had to move on, practical reasons, small budget shoot, etc. And I felt very bad about it. I really wanted that scene to work desperately. I was like, there can't be even one scene in this film, one moment in this film, which is not beautiful. And so I mulled over it endlessly after that night. And I went while we were shooting for that scene, I went to Irrfan and I looked at him in complete desperation, because I was like, he with his experience will come up with something which will solve our problem and we'll get the scene right, you know. So and he just looked at me and he shrugged his shoulders and said, which was a very, very wonderful, because it was almost like, I know what you're going through. I've been through it. I empathize with you, but there's nothing we can do. So let's just chill. You know, that kind of a feeling. So I went back to my hotel room and stressed about that endlessly. And then Anup called one day and said that we're getting an opportunity to reshoot that scene. And Anup asked us to change one thing in the scene, which was, I turned to Irrfan and then I sit down. And we were doing it differently, just one thing in the choreography. And right before we did that, so Anup suggested that, and I felt it was an odd thing to do, because it was not something that, you know, like actors always say, I can't, it's not natural for me to do this. And I felt that it was a bit odd, but I said, I'll follow his instructions and I'll see what comes out of it. So that, and before I started doing that, Irrfan just held my hand very gently, like he put his hand on top of mine. And that just totally transformed the scene for me. It really, and when I read this scene in the script, this was the part that I was nervous about. This was the part that I didn't know how to do. And what I experienced between on shot with that, on that day, thanks to Anup and Irrfan, is something that I have never experienced again. Maybe yes, somewhere, but not with the intensity that I felt it then. And that was the first time I felt it. And I will always be very, very grateful to Irrfan for that. And I think he remembered the moment too. So it became even more special for me that he valued it as well, because several years later when the film was releasing, he said, in the way that he talks, he said, you know, I really liked your performance in the film, and he was giving me feedback on the film. And he said, you know, that scene, उस दिन हम लोग दोनों के बीच में कुछ हुआ था ना. So I just felt so, and this was years later, and Irrfan had done 3 years later, and Irrfan had done so much work in between. I felt that it was special to me and it was special to him also. Sorry, I'm telling that story again.
Listen, there are people who are going to see this who don't know this story. It's a fantastic story. It's a story of such generosity and connection. Thank you. Tillotama?
So I never actually knew that Irrfan is a friend of mine. So when you said, you know, we are friends, it is something that I'm slowly beginning to understand, that actually he was a really good friend to me. but I never thought of him as a friend. I thought of him as a colleague who can see through me in a very uncomfortable way, which is why I socialized more with his wife than him, because I always felt he gave me a hard time because he could see through certain things that were very private, you know. And but I mean, the last 2 years, he was kinder. He was very expressive about um, his encouragements, things that I'm sure he felt before, but he never said it, and he didn't say it for a reason, because I think he really grappled and understands the agony and ecstasy of being an artist who is searching for a story that they want to be a part of, and he has been part of so many. His legacy in that sense is so rich that when he sees someone who is younger, who is making a mash of it, and who is struggling in that, writhing with that agony, and missing the ecstasy that one has experienced momentarily. Let's say in a kissa, what happens after a monsoon wedding or a kissa, where you feel the magic, and then you want to recreate it, and then you as an actor, you're always searching for it. And I think Irfan just saw through that and would look at me and say certain things. And I think that is one of the things that he said that I remember is when I was replaced in a film, and I went into a kind of darkness, which was really hard for me to come out. And I felt my freedom the end of my suffering would be when I would find out why I was replaced. And I would keep asking Irfan, will you find out for me? Why was I replaced in the film? And what really happened? I really want to know. Then I'll be really free. Then I'll be able to really know that what is it about me that I need to change? Why was I removed? And I remember him telling me, he's told me this many times, but he told me this. He said, the day the question is not a question that you're interested in anymore, you'll really be free and you'll be able to thrive as an actor. And I really, really appreciate that. I was so angry when he told me that how can you say that you are an actor who has so much work, which is why you can tell an actor who doesn't have that much work that just let go. And that's when you'll be really free. Just focus on your work. Just focus on your craft. And like, what work? That's exactly what I'm trying to say. It's a focus on in the inner richness of your life. And that's really something that Irfan has taught me. And I think it's what makes him such an enigma, because he's such a curious learner. He's so curious about everybody and about everything, and the richness of his inner life and his curiosity is what he was trying to tell me. That let go of the question, why this happened or why did this happen to me. Rather, immerse yourself in. He was so excited when I would swim and I would tell him about my swimming, or when I would write something and share with him, or when I tried to learn a song and I sang it for him. Those things, I think he really helped me cultivate a life beyond being in front of the camera, and a pursuit of creativity and enriching one's life beyond that which is seen, or beyond that which makes it to the cinema. And that for me is Irfan's massive contribution to my life, besides the fact that I got to play his daughter, and when he hugged me, and that in the film he haunted me, and in life I will always have him. And that's a gift that'll never go. In a scene in Qissa, when he beats me up, literally, I have to collapse, and the camera is on his face, and I collapse to his feet. And I have to admit, I've never said this before, but Irfan has the most beautiful feet, and I was just so happy to lie there in this hot sand and just watch this, look at this man's feet, and know in that moment that actually he is He's given me so much, and I really thank Anup for making me realize it. And that was why I think it was so important for me to do Hindi medium and Angrezi medium, because I just needed to be in that room with this man and learn how to laugh and be curious about other things, you know. Yeah.
Thank you, Tillotama. Tisca?
So I've known Irrfan for many, many years, and I can see Anup smiling already because he knows the story that I'm going to now narrate. So Irrfan, I think, was a kind of a human scanner. He saw you and he sort of sussed you out really quickly, really well. And not in a judgmental way, but just in a way that he understood. And so we were doing this thing, a bestseller, which was directed by, star bestseller directed by Tigmanshu, called Ek Shaam Ki Mulaqat. I was playing his wife. And he, you know, we finished, as we finished the day's work, he was saying, kya kar rahi hai, kahan kar rahi hai, whatever. I'd done a couple of films in Hindi and they'd all tanked, and I thought that I'd made the wrong decision by trying to become an actor, because I'm talking about the mid-90s to late 90s, and I was thinking maybe quit. And I'd done some theatre, and I was thinking, I'm really enjoying this, but I can't sustain this. I can't sustain being a theatre actor in India and call that a career as such. So it's going to be hard. So I've got to find something else to do, and I was looking for options. And at that time, I did this one piece of work. And him and Tishu, Tigmanshu, he, particularly Irrfan, he got on my case. He's saying, हाँ छोड़ना छोड़ दे, तेरे को क्या है? Actor, acting के लिए guts चाहिए होते हैं, guts तो है नहीं guts है तो मत करो, कौन बोल रहा है? किसने बोला है आने के लिए मत आओ, मत करो, करना है तो. And he followed me across that house. We were shooting in this one place in Goregaon. And it was an old bungalow, and he went up. I was like, I don't want to listen to this man. And he followed me up after 5 minutes, and he pulled out a cigarette and he said, "Tu chhod ke kya karegi? Tu kar le, tu chhod de." And I was like, "Haan, chhod dungi. It's okay. Now just get off my case." But he wouldn't. And for the next 4 days, we shot 5 days all in all. And he would find me wherever I was. And I think he probably sensed my nature was the kind that loves to get provoked and loves to get challenged. The minute you tell me that ये नहीं हो सकता, तो my brain starts working. कि अच्छा बोल तो रहे हो तुम नहीं हो सकता, पर कोई तो तरीका होगा करके देखते हैं. That's like my way of looking at life, like challenge everything. So had he told me you're a good actor and you're doing a good job and all of that, I would have like been like, I know about that. But the fact that he got into my skin and he bugged me, and he bugged me and bugged me and bugged me. They offered me the next bestseller, which he said, "Iske baad chhod dena. Main to tere ko bol raha hu, chhod hi de. Tu to वैसे ही irritating hai, tu chhod de." And he offered me the next bestseller, which he was producing, and Chopra had actually written. So Chopra wrote that, Irrfan produced it, and Tigmanshu directed it. And in that again, he started his thing. And then he would say, "Sham ko aa rahi hai? Ghar aa rahi hai? Tu aa rahi hai? Nahi aa rahi? Aa rahi hai? Nahi aa rahi?" And then he gave me Once Upon a Time in America, and he gave me Fargo, that had just released. I think this was the very late 90s. And he said, "Dekhi to hogi nahi tujhe film? Dekhi to hogi nahi?" So I said, "Dekh li hai." एक ही बार देख के समझ आई, आगे समझ, तेरे को सब समझ आ गई, क्या समझ आई, मेरे को बता. And that was how he actually provoked me into not giving up acting. And that was his relationship with me. Even on Qissa, he would tell me, we would be sitting and getting our makeup done in the same trailer. His people would be sticking his dadi one ball at a time and all of that. And I would be getting my mic put in my hairpiece from here and into the plait, into the long plait. And it would take hours. Like, we'd get there about 6 o'clock in the morning, 6 or 6:15. And till 8, we were just getting ready because, he had this big thing to put, and I had this elaborate wig, which, was very difficult to put on, but very easy to wear. I mean, meaning to act in, because it was lightweight. But he would then continuously, like, he would sit quiet for half an hour, And then he would say something which would bug me for 45 minutes. And it was just like the thing. It was just the relationship, which was like, and then one time we both were winning an award for best actor, best actress for two separate things. And he said, "Kya kariye aajkal, kya kariye?" This is the award function. We're sitting next to each other. We're going to be announced to go up on stage and get our awards. He said, "Kya kariye aajkal, kya kariye, kya kariye? Huh? Kya kariye, bol kya kariye?" So I said, "Ek play kar rahi hu." Kaun sa? So I said, "Mahatma versus Gandhi." "Mahatma versus Gandhi mein kya kariye, kya kariye, kya kariye?" So I got so irritated with him. I said, "Gandhi play kar rahi hu. Bade boobs wala Gandhi. Okay? Get off my case." Because he would just annoy me. And I think in that annoyance was his idea that don't leave my side. I'm fighting a battle here for putting authentic, caring people who care about a performance and not just about looking hot or looking this or looking that. So he wanted those people in his corner. He didn't want, because this was the late 90s, the early 2000s, he didn't want to be fighting that battle alone. And he fought a tough battle. It was hard. And I know that. I know that because I've chatted with him for about that for hours. And he succeeded beyond anyone's wildest imagination. But he didn't want to be the only person fighting that battle. And he was looking for comrades, for friends. And his way of getting me to be that was by provoking me. And it still feels very strange to say something in the past tense about him, because for me, I can honestly say this. There's two people that I miss. There's a director friend of mine who passed on called Gary. And there is Irrfan, who cannot become the past tense for me. He is the present tense for me. And I didn't even know I loved him so much, irritating as he was. But I did, and I do very much love him. And I miss him.
Thank you so much. Both Qissa and Irrfan, I think, opened a lot of doors for a lot of people. And thank you for giving us such enduring work. And Anup, I just want to say that make more films and more powerful EDs for just keeping the faith and making us so proud. We do at the festival what we do because of people like you, for artists like you. And thank you so much for joining me today in talking about Qissa. And I think Qissa is one enduring work that all of you have created that you should be very, very proud of, because we are. Thank you.
Smriti, thank you so
Smriti.
very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Smriti.
Thanks, Smriti. Thank you.